I did a TEDx talk on this, and I say, look, when the world is against you and everything is wrong and there's no way you can move forward, you just take another step.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more step. They say this in Navy SEALs. I got a couple SEAL buddies.
Mm-hmm.
When you think you can't, you just think, can I take one more step? Yes, I can. One more step. Yes, I can. And that's how you move forward.
Yeah. So one of the most critical pieces of growing a company is selling your core product. And the funny thing is, the most critical piece of exiting your company is selling your business. How you approach either one, I think, can make the difference. Preparing for, getting to, and sitting at the sales or negotiating table is how you extract the most value from the market, whether you're selling your product or you're selling your company. So today I have the privilege of sitting down with Brian Will, industry-leading business and sales management consultant. And we're going to look at both sides of this coin. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate you having me. It's going to be fun today.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always good talking about, new revenue, extracting value from the market in terms of a core product offering. And then on the flip side, there's a lot of people listening to this podcast that are about trying to sell their company at some point. So extracting the market value at that point too. Before we jump in, why don't you give us just a little bit of your background, kind of your pedigree, so we understand context to your thoughts.
Oh gosh, let's see. I call myself the most unconventionally educated guy you've probably ever met in business. Starting with failing out of high school at 16.
It's a good start.
Managing to graduate with a 1.2 after that. Kicked out of the house at 18. Joined the military because I didn't have any place to go. Got off active duty. Started my first business because I was a terrible employee. Couldn't hold a job. I laugh. I joking, and it's not even a joke. My first job was a waiter, and my first day as a waiter, I worked a 12-hour shift, and I went to count my tips up, and I owed them $6. So I was not an example of somebody who you looked at and went, that guy's going to be huge.
You would have done much better accepting credit cards, but they didn't have that much back then.
So I went on to start a landscaping business because I thought anybody could mow grass and dig holes. Did that for 10 years, built it up to 7 franchises, and we did good right up until we didn't.
Okay.
That business collapsed. I lost everything when I was 30. My daughter needed open heart surgery.
Oh, wow.
Lost my house, my cars, and had to start all over again. Started selling insurance for a buddy of mine. 6 months later, started my own insurance agency, and a year and a half after that, this was the dawn of the internet, and I had built the first call center-based insurance sales organization. I sold it to a venture capital firm. That was in 1999.
Wow. Okay, let's stop there for a minute and go back to your daughter. I'm not going to glaze over the open heart surgery.
Yeah.
How is she doing now?
She's good. We found out when she was 2 that she had something called atrial septal defect, which is a hole in the atrial side of your heart.
Okay, yeah.
And had to have open heart surgery to repair that, which today... Yeah. They go in through the belly button, they slap a patch on, it's no big deal.
Yep.
But 28 years ago, it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
Met an amazing doctor, whole story there. But, and then we found out as soon as she was done that, she was going blind in one eye. So she had a rough start to life, but she's doing good now. So.
Oh, so that was when she was a baby.
That's when she was 2 years old to 3 years old.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, sorry to interrupt you, but I just had to get that. Okay, that was pretty big. You just kind of glaze over that. So then you move into starting an insurance company?
Well, I tell that story because there are people that are facing, traumatic things in life.
Yes.
And it's going to stop them. And as I did a TEDx talk on this, and I say, look, when the world is against you and everything is wrong and there's no way you can move forward, you just take another step.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more step. They say this in Navy SEALs. I got a couple SEAL buddies. Mm-hmm. When you think you can't, you just think, can I take one more step? Yes, I can. One more step. Yes, I can. And that's how you move forward.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I started selling insurance, dawn of the internet, created something, bought by a venture capital firm. Funny story. The banks wanted me to invest the money. I said, no, I want to pay my house off, pay my cars off, and secure my lifestyle.
Yes.
That was in January of 2000. And if you remember March of 2000, that's when the internet bubble burst.
Yeah.
90% collapse and everything. I'd have lost everything.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't.
Timing.
You've
been there before. You don't want to go there again.
Yeah. So anyway, I ended up starting another company, doing it again, doing online insurance sales, sold it to another venture capital firm. Started an online marketing company, sold it to a private equity firm. That was an $80 million acquisition we did.
Yeah.
Went into consulting, started doing consulting for Fortune 500 companies in sales and sales management. Started writing books, became a pilot, a dive master, climbed mountains, wrote 5 books, 2 Wall Street Journal bestsellers. Started another couple companies. I own a chain of restaurants today. I do business consulting today. I own a real estate company in Georgia and Florida. So it's that momentum thing. Once you figure out how to succeed, it becomes much easier to succeed. But my story literally is one of failure, overcoming failure, learning from failure, and then figuring out how to succeed.
So there's a lot of different things you did in there, minus the personal things, going from landscaping to insurance to
software,
all the things. And, now you own some restaurants like that. Those are all very different businesses. What's the thread there? Like and I would even say consulting too. How did you go from selling your company and getting consulting?
So the thread there is what most people don't understand about business, to be very honest with you.
Okay.
Most people think that the business they are in is the product that they sell.
Okay.
And that is because most people who start businesses are technicians in whatever field they're in. And so if I'm a plumber, I start a plumbing business. If I'm an electrician. Right. If I'm an architect, I start an architect. But what they don't understand is that ultimately your business is business. And what you do is a product or service inside that business. And if you understand the back end of a business, or what we call the business inside the business, and you know how to run a business and do P&L analysis and build sales organizations, and if you understand how to run a business, the product is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're doing plumbing or architectural work or restaurants or software or whatever. Running the business is running a business. That's why you see a lot of CEOs in major corporations didn't come from that industry, right?
Yeah.
Tim Cook was not a cell phone guy when they hired him.
Right.
And Jack Welch, when he left GE and went over to run something else, was not whatever he went over to run. It's understanding business, which is what makes a good CEO or what makes a good business person. So there's a whole discussion about that topic right there. But my common thread is I love business and I'm ADHD. So if I do things for too long, I get bored.
Yeah.
I'm a builder, not a manager. So I build a business, I sell it. I build a business, I sell it. I'm selling my restaurants right now. They'll be gone in the next 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
And on to something else.
Now, are these businesses typically, I know the online businesses are different, but like the restaurants, is that somewhere close to where you live, or or you find opportunities anywhere and go for it?
Well, the restaurants are an anomaly because after we had sold the third company, I used to take my employees out for happy hour almost every day.
Must have been a fun place to work.
Yeah. Well, after we sold the business, we were sitting at this bar, and one of my employees was like, "Why don't you love coming to these places? Why don't you buy one?"
Yeah.
And it's literally a cliche. You look at athletes, people they make a lot of money. They buy a restaurant because they think it's the fun thing to do. And that's what I do.
You want to be in the fun business.
And the first year I lost $75,000 and I thought this is not fun. So I bought 4 more because that's what we do as entrepreneurs.
You compound it.
Triple down.
Yeah.
And I sold the first one, and then the next 4 were successful. And then I did a couple more and they failed. And in 15 years, I've had 15 restaurants. And of the 15 restaurants, I've had 9 succeed and 6 fail. So even as good as I think I am, I still fail.
Yeah.
But I learn from every failure.
Yeah. That's a lot of wisdom there. Well, okay. That's a great background. So thanks for that. We might have to have you back and just talk about some of your past companies and stories. And I know in our pre-call, you told me a bunch of stories, and I know you got a treasure trove of stories just locked away. We should probably one by one bring those out. But for the sake of today's discussion, we are talking about so selling your core product, extracting value from the market. How do you do that, really successfully? And then the second part, selling your company. So let's start with this first part of selling a core product. What's the first thing that you would tell people to do?
To sell a core product or to be good at sales? You be more specific in the question.
I would say in selling. So that's really the focus there is,
okay.
As we're talking about preparing to get to the sales table, getting to it and then sitting at it. So the act of sales is sort of the third part. But then there's a preparation part and getting there.
So I say I call this the magic of sales, and there's 5 parts to the magic of sales. So in order for you to be a high performance, high producing salesperson, you need to have the ability to get people to like you, trust you, think that you are looking out for their best interests. You need to come across as a professional, and then you need to make a connection with them. So these are the 5 things we teach in our five keys to magic, right?
Okay.
And all of those are about preparation before you even begin the sales process, right? So if I'm a professional, one of my number 4 is be a professional, then I understand my product, but I also understand my competition. Okay. Because if I'm, whatever it is I'm selling, if I don't understand what I'm selling against or who I'm selling against, then
Sure.
I'm just out here trying to schlep something without understanding really what's going on.
Yeah. You have to know what other options your client has.
Sure. And by the way, the second part of that is you need to make people like you and trust you and think you're looking out for the best interests, right?
Okay.
So we build when I do sales training for organizations, and in fact, my whole new online sales training courses that are coming out here in about a week or so, we go over what we call specific and general type scripting. And the specific scripting that we go over generally is the very first thing you do with a client or say to a client when you first see them. Because let me ask you a question. Do you know what, I call this the first objection in every sales process. The first objection is this: people don't like salespeople.
Yes.
Right. And it's not that they don't like them personally.
Right.
You might be a great person. You have parties, you take your kids out, you coach Little League, but when you put your sales hat on, people don't trust you. They don't trust you. And so if you're starting a relationship with somebody and you're the salesperson, then you need to understand that the minute they lay eyes on you or hear your voice, they don't trust anything coming out of your mouth.
That's right.
Because you're in sales, they don't trust you. And because they don't trust you, they don't think you're looking out for their best interests, and they generally tend not to like you. And it's really a product of it's not that they don't like you, it's that they're afraid of you. They're afraid of your magic salesperson voodoo that's going to make them do something they don't want to do.
Committing to something that's not going to be valuable.
Or it's overpriced. Or that's
or
what they're afraid of. They're afraid of you because they're afraid you have the ability to force them to do things they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that fear comes from the unknown of what you're going to say, what you're going to do, and what's going to happen next. And I always use this example. Lee, have you ever walked into a dark room? Everybody has, right?
Yeah.
And when you walk into a dark room, what do you instinctively do? You walk very slowly. You put one foot in front of the other. You've got your hands out because you're looking for things to run into.
Right.
And that is your client when you first start speaking to them. They're like walking into your dark room and they have no idea what's going to happen.
They don't know where they're going. They don't know where you're taking them.
That's exactly right. And so your job, simply put, is to turn the light on. And we do that by telling them what's going to happen next. I would say, Lee, listen, I understand you're looking to buy a camera, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, in order for me to figure out what you need, I'm going to need to ask you a bunch of questions. And the answers to those questions will determine what type of camera we get, what type of lens we're going to need, what you're going to use it for. And once we make that determination, I'm going to run over the pricing on these cameras. I'm going to give you your options, and then I'm going to let you decide which camera you want to buy. Now, is that fair enough?
Yes.
Now, I've explained to you what's going to happen next. You now know. I'm going to ask you questions. And I'm then going to give you some pricing, and then I'm going to let you decide. I'm not going to sell you. And then I say, is that fair enough? And I get you to agree. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you're going to ask me questions, give me pricing, let me decide.
Yeah,
that's
I'll answer your questions. Yeah.
Right. I took away the unknown. I'm not going to try to sell you something. And now I, as a salesperson, get the opportunity to start what I call the fact finding, which is to start getting you to tell me everything you want, everything you need, everything you don't. I will get you to sell yourself simply by asking you the right questions. And that's what we call general scripting.
That's the voodoo.
So Lee, why do you need a camera? Well, I run a podcast. Okay. So how long has your podcast been going? Well, it's been going for 2 years. So you have a camera now. Well, yeah. Well, why do you need a new one? Well, I need a better one. Well, what's wrong with the camera you've got? Well, it's not high enough to 720. I need a 1080. So you need a 1080 camera. Okay. Are you looking for something with a lot of options? No, in other words, I'm going to lead you through questions based on the fact that I know cameras.
Right.
And get you to tell me exactly what you want. And then I go, you know what? By the way, I got cameras that do exactly that range from about $500 to about $1,500. Where are you looking to be in that range? And you go, well, I like to be about, $700. Great. Right. Here it is. This camera does everything you need, everything we've talked about. It's in your price range. Would you like me to talk to you about this camera? And you go, Well, yeah, if it does everything I need and it's in my price range, yes, please tell me about that camera.
Mm-hmm.
But I've already got you to admit or agree to everything this camera does for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got you to tell me what you can afford to pay for it.
Right.
Without ever selling or pitching you anything. It's purely questions that drive you to tell me how to close you.
Yeah, it's sometimes called consultative selling, but you think of it like a guide. And kind of going back to the beginning of the flipping the light on, you're basically saying, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do. Are you okay with doing that?" And they say yes. Now you are the guide. It feels like more of a guide where we're now walking together down this path, versus I'm going to just hold all the information hostage behind me and not show it to you. And it's going to make it really hard for you to trust any question I have or anything that I do.
Right. So we say there are three types of people, and it's the way you give and receive information, right? Some people give and receive information emotionally. Some people give and receive information based on data. And some people give and receive information. I forget what the third one is. But point being, the other scenario is you walk into my store and you say, I'm looking for a camera. And I go, okay, I'm going to tell you about every single camera I've got in here. And then I'm going to let you decide. And after about 5 minutes, you're just like, dude, that's not what I want. And I'm tired of you talking to me. Because I, as a salesperson, think I've got to educate you on everything there is to know about cameras. And all you wanted was a 1080 camera with an auto flash that I could plug my computer into, right? That's all you wanted. And I'm sitting here trying to educate you in the entire camera industry.
That's right.
That's a data person trying to talk to somebody who's not interested in all the data.
That's right.
Or I could say, you know what? I'm glad you came in today. This is the camera for you. And you're like, well, how do you know that's a camera for me? You don't even know what I'm looking for.
That's right.
I'm just trying to sell you the one that I've got on sale, or my manager told me we need to move today.
Yeah.
Because I make extra commission on it. So yes, it's a guide, but I'm allowing you to guide the process by asking you the right questions.
Yeah, that's a good flip of that. Yeah, I like that.
And then in asking you those questions, I also overcome all your future objections. Because we know what objection is price. So I've already told you my cameras are $500 to $1,500. You can't come back and say, well, I'm looking for $400 because I've already told you that's not possible.
Right.
And I got you to tell me $700 was the right price. Right. So I take away that objection. Right. I asked you what you needed in the camera. I showed you the camera that did everything you want. I take away the objection of it's not going to do what I need. So there's a series of questions we will build in your sales process to lead your client into closing themselves. And that is the key to sales. Overcome objections before they have it. Close them in the question asking phase. The close is not the close. Closing is nothing. That almost doesn't even exist.
Yeah. So. Anybody right now that's deep into selling themselves as a sales rep of a company, SDR, BDR, building a sales team or whatever. I know they're taking notes right now because this is all really good, very practical, applicable types of things. And kind of going back to the idea of being the guide, I think that you convinced me. I think flipping that on its head, because for the sake of transparency to the prospect, you're saying that, hey, I would like for you to guide me along this path. It puts them more in control and makes them feel, even
gives
more
them the illusion of control while
Correct.
you are actually controlling the process
Correct.
in the background.
Yeah, well, and I'd say control sounds negative. It's more leading. So like you're leading them and they are guiding you. And so, but the great thing that's, is so good of all this is like turning that light on at the beginning and saying, hey, is this a path we want to walk down? And getting agreement there is the biggest piece, because once you have agreement there, now you can lead them while they guide you.
Yes. Perfect example. You got
I like that a lot. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay.
We're done. I appreciate my time today.
Yep, that's it. Done. I mean, buy the book, whatever. No, I think that there's a lot baked in there. Obviously, you're deep in that kind of mindset, and have been. But let's sort of pull it apart a little bit. Like we talk about preparing for, let's say the sales table is that question of getting on the path, right? Like leading up to that question, what kind of preparation is involved in setting the stage.
So one of the training modules we do is tell me what your top 5 objections are. I promise you that no matter what you sell, there are probably 5 things that every single client has as a potential objection.
Yes.
Now, there are always outliers, but there's
Sure.
generally 5. Mm-hmm. And so what we do in our preparation is, what are those 5 and how are you going to handle it? What do you say? And it's not about, this is where most training programs, in my opinion, aren't as effective as they could be. Most training programs try to teach you how to overcome the objection after the sale, or after the presentation.
Yeah.
Where they should be teaching you how to overcome the objection before the client has it. Right? Again, if I go back, and I don't know anything about cameras, by the way, but if I go back to my camera, one of the objections might be it only has one lens. Right. And that lens might not fit for what I'm looking for. I'm making stuff up. I know nothing about cameras.
Sure.
If I know that's an objection, then I begin the whole process with, by the way, I have cameras from 500 to 1500. Wherever your price range is, I can probably make it fit with multiple lenses. So whatever lens you need, we can make it fit into that camera. And that takes away the objection later. Or
that's right.
My problem is that I do a lot of videos and I don't have, I have a challenge because the cameras don't last long enough. The batteries die. So I would do right up front. And by the way, if you do videos, Lee, I have a camera that comes with an extra large battery, so it lasts 3 times longer than the normal camera. Whatever the objections are, we build that into the question process right up front. Now, let me ask you something. I know that you're looking for cameras, and here's some of the objections I hear a lot. The battery doesn't last as long. It doesn't have the right lens. It doesn't have blah, blah, blah. It doesn't blah, blah, blah. Are any of these concerns of yours? And you go, well, yeah, I am concerned about these 2 things. Perfect. I'm gonna show you how to handle that later. Now, and we keep going through the process.
Yeah, right.
Overcome the top 5 objections before they ever have them, and they won't have them at the end.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, when I said earlier, so you need a camera. What for? I run a podcast. What's wrong with the camera you've got? It just broke. So your camera's broken. You need a new one. So you probably need it right away. When's your next podcast? Next week. Okay, so we got to get you a camera before next week. Yes. I just took away your objection of, I'm only shopping. I'm not really looking right now. I'm not making a decision. That objection's gone.
Yeah, or I'm going to buy online and wait for it to be shipped. That's not an option.
It's gone.
Yeah, and I think this is really critical just to sit here for a minute because, especially, and I know you're talking about kind of a retail setting, but in a lot of settings, I mean, pretty much every setting, whatever you're selling, service, product, whatever, everyone has all the information at their fingertips online. They can go online. They can ask ChatGPT. They can do all the research to their heart's content. Some people more than others. They're going to show up pretty much knowing at the point of sale which way they're going to go. If they're there, that means you're in contention. And so by adopting this process, it's beautiful because you're basically saying, hey, I know you did all your research and I know you have these three objectives and maybe these 2 specific. So I'm going to hit them all and try to find your big one. And then we're going to dive deep on it.
I also, one of my first questions is, have you shopped anywhere else? Well, yeah, I looked at Camera Store down the street. They're a great operation. Why didn't you buy one of their cameras?
Yeah.
I've complimented my competition, and then I've asked, what did they do wrong? Because I don't want to do that, right? Well, I just wanted to check the pricing. Well, what kind of pricing range were you in with them? And what kind of camera were you looking at? And, well, I was looking at the blah, 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 or whatever. And this works with landscaping. Have you got any other landscaping bids? Yeah, I did. I got a bid from XYZ. They're a great company. They do work all over town. Why didn't you go with them? Yeah. Well, I just wanted to see what they had. Okay, great. I'm going to find out everything I need to know about this client, where they've shopped, what they looked at, why they didn't buy. If I can get a price that they were looked at before, I'm going to get that, because all these are objections that I need to overcome before they have them.
So leading up to these conversations, I would assume that you probably need to know your product really well, so that, and then you mentioned knowing your competitors, knowing having all this information there so that you can draw on it in the form of insightful questions.
Well, this is what we call our general scripting, right? So the question was, what do you do? First, you prepare. You prepare by building your initial script out. What's the first thing I'm going to say to you to take away that objection? And then your general scripting, which is, what are my top 5 objections that I'm going to build questions around so that I can ask them in my fact-finding phase, right? And then practicing them. Like I did a podcast this morning, and the gentleman said, yeah, but people, they get in this situation, they start sweating, and, and they get nervous. And I said, yes, but do you know where confidence comes from? Confidence comes from repetition of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sweating, it's because you haven't practiced what you're saying enough.
That's a good point.
Straight up. So once you figure out the opening, you figure out the objection questions, you figure out everything you're supposed to do, then you sit and you do it over and over and over and over. And as I like to say, I need to be able to wake you up out of your sleep and ask you a question and you rip an answer off.
Yep. It's
And
muscle memory.
when you're that automatic in the way you do it, then nobody's going to make you sweat, because no matter what your client says, you've done it 50 times or 100 times. You just know what you need to do.
Yeah.
So that's how you prepare.
Yeah, I love that. That's a huge piece in the practical doing. So if we wrap this part one up of selling your core product, what it seems like to me is all of this sort of culminates in building a sales team or a sales machine. Mm-hmm. That's going to help you extract the most value in each one of your selling opportunities. So your growth is going to happen both from top line revenue and bottom. And then as we move along, you're growing your company. Let's look at part two, selling your company. You want to extract as much value from the market as possible. So how much do these techniques play in that part of the process as well?
So that's a gigantic question.
Yeah.
Right. To extract the most value, there's all kinds of things that go along with that.
Right.
Marketing, sales are both sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. Marketing, sales have to work in conjunction with each other, from acquisition cost to average revenue per sale to average profit per sale. Mm-hmm. One of the things we do with organizations is we build what we call bottom-up profit and loss statements. Most people look at an organization from the top down. Mm-hmm. I teach them how to look at it from the bottom up. In other words, if I have $1 million company and 10 salespeople, that means each salesperson has to do $100,000 of sales to get to my $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Which means all expenses in my company have to be divided by 10 and attributed to each one of my 10 salespeople. Mm-hmm. So each salesperson now has their own personal profit and loss statement attached to them. Mm. And when I build that matrix out, I can now determine whether each one of my salespeople are profitable or they're not profitable. And once I do that, I can start extracting the ones that aren't, moving lead opportunities to the ones that are, which generates higher revenue at higher mm-hmm. margins with less overhead, right? So this is how we start extracting value inside.
Yeah, I love that framework. That's
now,
great.
There's so many other pieces to this, but just as it relates to sales, once I've built that, then I need to position my company from an optics standpoint as having the most value at the highest revenue and profit with the least amount of work, with the best systems in place mm-hmm. and the best CEO, right? As I like to say, there is literally no shortage of money for well-run companies with good CEOs. There's no shortage. Anybody that thinks it's hard to sell a company just doesn't have a great CEO, a great business plan, and great profits. Yeah. Because private equity will buy companies all day, every day if it meets those three criteria. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know how to position their company properly, from reclassification of earnings and add backs and balance sheet preparation, in order to make their company look the best. Mm-hmm. And this is why we hire deal teams. My last book is about preparing your company for a sale. Yeah. This is why bringing in a deal team to prepare and position your company in the best light, so that when we go to see the PE or the VC guy, we go, here's our deal book. This is a company you're looking at. Mm-hmm. And they open it up and look at it and they're like, oh my God, this thing's very well run. We got a great CEO. The profit margins are good. GPMs are good. They have a growth plan in place, which is critical to selling. We would like to make an offer on this company. And because you've done it right, you'll get the maximum value.
Yeah.
Right? But everything you do is about selling your business, your concept, and your thought, and selling your CEO to the venture capital or the private equity firm. And that's how you extract money. So if you go into this poorly planned and you don't do things right, it's going to come back and cost you millions of dollars potentially. I've seen it.
So then in effect, your core product at that stage becomes these levers or these factors, these major factors that you have paid attention to and prioritize leading up to these conversations.
So you just hit the nail on the head and I missed it. What did you say? The first thing, what you're selling to a private equity firm or venture capitalist is not the product that you sell.
No.
It's
It
not.
becomes a new core product.
It is the data in your business that they are buying.
And
So
what that the story that data tells.
yes, like my friend Jeff, who co-wrote my book with me, sells landscaping, tree removal, snow removal, blue collar type of stuff.
Sure.
This PE firm, by the way, they are professional investors. They don't know anything about landscaping, and they don't care about landscaping. It's the very first thing I said. A business is not about the product. It's about the business. They don't care about the product. They care about the data inside the business and what they can do with that data to manipulate it, significantly improve it so that they can sell it at a higher multiple. So your business is about the data, what the data looks like, and what the data means from a growth standpoint. Don't confuse data with product. Data is what people buy.
Right. Yeah. And the data is your new product.
Yes.
That's the product you're selling.
I was literally on a consulting project not too long ago, $28 million company. I went to their corporate retreat. I'm doing a presentation for their executive team. And I said, what do you guys sell? And they said, XYZ. And I said, no. You think you're an XYZ company? You sell that, but that's not what you do. What you do is data, and data will drive your growth or cause your failure. And if you're not analyzing your data, then you are guessing and shooting in the dark. Yeah. And by the way, they were trying to get acquired. So once again, data was what the PE firm was looking at. It's all about the data, and selling that data requires a deal team with a good salesperson, which we call the deal maker.
The deal maker. Okay. So in the process, at the sales table, let's call that preparation.
That's all the preparation. Yep.
At the sales table, selling your company, is the process that you took us through before, turning the light on, being the lead and having them guide you. Does that translate, or is this a different process?
Different process. Okay. If you have properly packaged a company, when I go to the deal table with a PE firm, what I'm selling is this is Lee. This is what Lee has built and done. Lee is a badass CEO. This is the growth strategy that Lee has put together. And this growth strategy says that we can 5X this company in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm selling Lee as a CEO. I'm selling the growth package that we put together. And to back up both of those things, here's the data. This is how he manages. This is how he reports. This is his gross profit margins. This is his net profit margins. This is why Lee's the guy. This is the growth plan. And this is the data to back it up. That's what I'm selling to a PE firm. That's a different type of sale, which is different than me selling a software package or selling landscaping or anything else.
Yeah, right. So when you go into those conversations, how should they transpire? Meaning, are you asking objection type questions up front and leading them into your product that you're selling, your data and CEO and systems?
If we want to talk specifically about private equity or venture capital, most of these companies, these firms are looking for either what we call a platform company, which is somebody with minimum 2 million EBITDA, or they're looking for a tuck-in company, which is somebody that's going to be able to just slide right in under the platform and add value, right?
Yes.
This is a longer conversation, but
yeah, kind of like a client base, almost like you're buying a client base and you're tucking it in. Yeah.
Yes. So typically you would go to a PE firm that specializes, let's say, in the restaurant business. You say, I know you guys own IHOPs and O'Charlie's, and you own TGI Fridays. I got a deal for you. This is a brand. It's got 7 locations. This is their numbers. This is their CEO. This is their growth plan. You're already in this business, so you need to take a look at this as an additional platform that you can roll up. And they go, oh, interesting. Now, I wouldn't take a landscaping company to a restaurant PE firm, and I wouldn't do the opposite either way. So I have to know what the PE firm's interested in, what they specialize in, what they've already got. Again, back to preparation, right? And then I build my package and I get it ready to go. And that way, when I walk in the door, I'm like, you already do this. I know what your numbers are. Here's my numbers on this one. Let's take a look at how we can make this deal happen. And if the numbers work, like I said, there's no shortage of revenue or money for them to invest. So yeah, it's about preparation, understanding who you're going to talk to, and then pitching it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, we didn't really get a lot of your stories in. Just for the sake of stories, because you told me a bunch on our pre-call, I got to have you slide something in there.
Okay.
You turned down $40 million to get $80 million. Tell us that story.
We did. So we were selling, it was an IT company. We were basically a pay-per-performance lead gen company. And And we showed up one day and there were 2 PE guys standing on our front porch waiting for us to get there with 5 cups of coffee. Yeah. And they said, we've heard about you and we want to buy you. This happens every day, by the way. If you are a well-run, profitable company and you have a reputation, these people are seeking you out. Mm-hmm. You're getting calls from them. Hey, I caution you, by the way, don't take their calls. Don't send them any information. Find somebody that knows how to package your deal. Mm-hmm. Let them manage it, because if you don't, you're going to get crushed. Yeah. So they walked in and said, we'd like to buy you. And we said, oh, okay, that sounds good. And they said, we'll give you $50 million. I'm going to shorten the story.
Sure.
We said, perfect. We'll sell it to you for $50 million. They go through the due diligence. It was about an 8-week process. Me and my senior partner fly up to Boston, go into this big building. And mind you, I jokingly say we're a couple of rubes from Marietta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And we get up there and they've got a big conference room that seats like 20 people, and there's 8 private equity guys sitting there with Harvard degrees. Mm-hmm. And it's me and Steve.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, well, I know we said 50, but we're going to offer you 40 instead. And we can close, next week. And I went because even though Steve was a senior partner, I'm the guy that talks.
Yeah.
And so I looked at him and I looked at Steve and I looked back and I said, you know what? I appreciate the offer, but we're going to turn that down. And these 8 guys are looking at me like, did he just say no to $40 million?
Yeah.
The guy drove up here in a Camry. Okay.
First of all, drove up there.
Okay. We flew, but that's a different story. And we were doing really well. So I didn't really have a Camry. I'm using that as an example.
Yeah, sure. No.
But these are big shot guys and they couldn't believe it. And so they spent like 25 minutes trying to convince us that $40 million was a fair offer.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I appreciate it, but no, I'm not interested in 40. You offered us 50. We agreed to 50. That's what we were, that's what we're going to do, or we're not going to do it. And they said, okay, thanks. See you later. Me and Steve leave the office. He still hasn't said a word. We drive to the airport. We get on the plane. We take off. And Steve looks over at me and he goes, are you sure? And I said, yeah. He goes, we got to go back to the other 3 partners and tell them that we're not bringing home $40 million. I said, Steve, I'm sure. This is sales. It's a game. We're not taking the $40 million. He said, okay. So we go home. 6 weeks later, another firm rolls up on our doorstep, comes to see us, and they're like, we heard that you didn't do the deal with this other large PE firm in Boston. These guys are in Chicago. What happened? And I said, oh, simple. They offered us $50 million. We said, and then they lowered it to 40. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. And quite frankly, we think we're worth more than that. And they said, okay, I tell you what we'll do. We'll give you the 50 plus 30 on the back end in stock and earnout. Would you do that? I said, yeah, we'll do that. That's a better deal.
A little bit better.
So we ended up doing that deal. And I remember when those guys left, Steve looked over at me and he goes, well, that worked out. I said, yes, it did.
To say the least. How long was that earnout?
This is something everything I've ever tried to teach anybody in my consulting practice basically came from something that I screwed up.
Okay.
I learned through failure, and hopefully other people can learn from my failures. So we had a 2-year earnout. The first year was $13 million. And then there was another $7 million in stock. And at the end of the first year, we did our $13 million in profit that we were required to do to get our $13 million earnout. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the year, we were like, hey, great, we did our $13 million profit. We're ready for our $13 million check. And they said, oh, no, you didn't do $13 million. You did $12.2 million. Mm-hmm. And we were like, no, we did $13 million. And they said, no, you have $800,000 in accounts receivable that you haven't collected yet as of December 31st. Therefore, you did 12.2 and didn't get your earnout.
Oh, wow. Like in total?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a get it or not.
Wow.
And we were freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I learned. I learned that number one, we allowed them to take over the accounting, mm-hmm. and we weren't watching it. And they simply didn't collect $800,000 of revenue. So that $800,000 saved them $13 million.
Yep. That's
Don't
crazy.
ever make that mistake again.
That is crazy.
Secondarily, I learned that you shouldn't do an all or nothing. That was another big one. Mm-hmm. And I have actually pitched that same mistake to multiple people in the past. Make sure you control your accounting, or at least you have oversight over it, and make sure you check on, do your due diligence prior to the end of your earnout period, right? And make sure that it's not an all or nothing deal. So they took advantage of us. We didn't. Again, we didn't have a deal team, by the way. This was 2006.
Yeah.
Again, which is why I tell people all the time, you need to bring a deal team in to help you put these deals together.
Yeah.
So we didn't get that 13 million. We kept the stock on the back end. The other lesson I will tell people on this one is we sold in 2006. We did 32 million in revenue with like 9 million in profit that year. It was a 30% margin.
Mm-hmm.
The next year we did 60 million in revenue with 13 million in profit. And we honestly thought we sold a year too early. The next year, the company crashed because the subprime credit market crashed because Congress outlawed predatory lending. And the company went from 60 million to 10. So while we didn't sell at the peak, we did sell right before the crash.
Right.
So we did, as my partner Steve would say, we didn't try to be greedy. We sold when we can make enough money to live luxuriously for the rest of our life.
Yes.
We didn't try to hold on to get every single dollar we could. And in doing so, we saved ourselves. We wouldn't have been able to sell it all after that. So
no, yeah, you wouldn't have, there's no way you could have known. It's just timing.
And you don't, and I tell people all the time, you have no idea what's going to happen. No idea. None. I try to do a deal with a company recently, and they're like, we can build the company bigger before we sell. I'm like, guys, you have no idea what's going to happen. And we're offering you $30 million.
Yeah.
Like, take the money. You're in your 30s. Set yourself up for life.
Right.
And then go do something else if you think you want to do something else.
What an amazing story. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
This has been just a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate you coming on, and so actionable, so practical. This is the kind of stuff I dream of for my podcast because the goal here is practical wisdom, and you've got a lot of practical and you got a lot of wisdom. So thank you so much.
Made a lot of mistakes, Lee. I appreciate you having me on and letting the world know everything I screwed up on. It's been awesome.
We'll have to have you back and tell us more.
I got 100 more stories anytime.
If people want to find you, because I know you have like 5 different books you've written and they're all valuable, where can we send them?
My website is brianwillmedia.com. My books, my podcasts, my training programs, my blogs and newsletters, literally everything is on there. brianwillmedia.com. Appreciate it.
Love it. Thanks again.
All right, man.